Oh, hello there. Oh, don't worry about Valak. She got stuck trying to enter our world through a demonic gateway using my iPad because the iPad started updating to iOS 12 right in the middle of it. So she's kind of stuck. It's really pathetic. So this, kids, is exactly why you should back up your demonic data before attempting an interdimensional crossover. Hi, Nuan the Movie Slinger here with a review of The Nun. So this movie is directed by Corinne Hardy and is a spin-off movie taking place in the Conjuring cinematic universe. The story begins in a Romanian monastery in the 1950s where two nuns are entering this sealed-off tunnel in the catacombs. But there's some kind of dark entity inside this tunnel. It attacks them, killing the older nun. Then it starts chasing the other nun who hangs herself before the dark entity could reach her. The next day, her body is found by a villager who's bringing supplies to the monastery. We'll call him the French guy. So the message reaches Vatican City where the cardinals decide to send Father Burke to investigate the situation at the monastery. Going with him is Sister Irene and the French guy. Let's start with the positives because it doesn't have much. I like this cast, although they were underdeveloped characters. Irene, played by Taissa Farmiga, is very likable and the only character that seemed to grow. She hasn't taken her vows yet and we see people mock her for this. She's quite liberal in her interpretation of the Bible. She seems more of a practical person, so as all the demonic shit starts to go down, it strengthens her resolve and faith. And there's even a moment where the team has a chance to escape, but Irene is like, no, we have to stay and finish the job. She ends up taking her vows, which I think becomes useful in the climax of the movie. Father Burke, played by Damien Bichir, is the only character with some backstory. He's done an exorcism in the past which failed, and he's carrying those regrets with him, which the demonic entity uses to mess with him. The disappointing part is that we never really see him overcome his guilt. There's no development to his character. The French guy, played by Jonas Bloquet, is pretty much the comic relief. In a horror movie, the audience needs that release of tension and he provided that. But that's all he is. This would have been fine if he's some throwaway character, but he actually becomes a very important piece in the final act. And since he has no backstory and no character development, we don't care about him at all and the ending kind of falls flat as a result. This movie is a huge step down from the Conjuring movies in terms of storytelling and also the horror elements. Let's talk about the storytelling first. Spoiler warning, but the movie gives so little story that it's not gonna be a big deal. We learn nothing about Valak, the demonic nun. We learn nothing about its character or what it wants to do. This thing has no personality and almost no dialogue. We know it wants to possess somebody, but why? It already seems very powerful on its own. What difference does possessing someone do? The other issue is that the movie does a really poor job of explaining what the hell is going on. It's very hard to understand what the characters are doing sometimes, what the goal is. For example, the opening scene with the nuns entering the tunnel, I thought they were going to release the demon which is imprisoned inside a vault. This makes sense because at the door it's written where God ends. I thought they wanted the demon's help, tried to release it, but then it turned on them. Sounds cool, right? Later we find out that they were trying to find this ancient artifact to defeat the demon. Okay, if you say so. It just didn't seem like that to me from their dialogue and body language. The geography of the monastery is so confusing and the director Corinne Hardy does a really poor job of showing where things are in relation to the buildings. Why is the artifact inside the creepy tunnel? Shouldn't the artifact be kept somewhere else? Somewhere that's not near the demonic gate area? Later on, the movie shows that the artifact and the demonic gate are located in two completely different areas. Then what the hell were the nuns doing? They don't need to enter the demonic gate area to retrieve the artifact. Did they get lost in their own monastery? What I love about the Conjuring movies is that you have the Warren characters to explain the entity, its capabilities, and what needs to be done to defeat it. It's very simple to follow. There's none of that here. They could have used Father Burke for that, but he's completely wasted. Let's talk about the horror. The movie has scares, but most of them are jump scares. There's none of that cool camera work and artistic flair that made the Conjuring movies feel so fresh and intense. They use loud noises and something jumping at the screen to scare you. It feels very cheap. There's also a hilarious scene where Valak rises out of the water. I was laughing at how silly this looked. Maybe they were going for something similar to Stephen King's It or Aliens. But we already know the demon is in the same room, so it's not a surprise, and it's definitely not scary. The scariest thing in this movie is the setting. The monastery looks really creepy, and it doesn't even need to be haunted. It just looks scary on its own. There are one or two cool sequences. My favorite scene was when Irene is praying in the chapel with some nuns to keep the demon away. Very intense sequence. There's also the scene where they explain the ancient artifact. It's the kind of artifact we've seen plenty of times before in stuff like Constantine or Supernatural, but I'm a sucker for ancient mystical relics that destroy demons, so I thought that was really cool. Also, since this movie is connected to the Conjuring movies, the filmmakers find themselves with their hands tied, creatively speaking. Even though there's a mildly satisfying conclusion where Irene and team banish the demon, the filmmakers are forced to let the demon out again. This felt really dumb. Everything we know about this artifact and its power tells us that the demon should be banished, but no, it's still around. How? I don't know. The only reason is, well, it just has to be around, otherwise Conjuring 2 can't happen. It feels painfully contrived. So, conclusion. The movie can be scary at times, but it's mostly due to the setting of the creepy monastery rather than the filmmaking itself. The storytelling is really bad, and I had a difficult time following what was going on. There was no effort to explain some of the supernatural phenomena we see. I don't want too much exposition, but it is important for the audience to have some idea of how the supernatural rules work within this universe. The three main characters were likable, but they're not very well developed. We learn nothing new about the main villain. It looks laughable in the final climactic scene. Seriously, if your main villain in a horror movie is getting laughed at, you failed. With their hands tied to continuity, there's nothing much the filmmakers can do here. This could have been a better movie if they had decided to use a completely new villain instead of using the demonic nun. There's a lot of potential to do new things in the Conjuring universe. Remember all the cursed artifacts in Warren's room? Use that shit. Do monster team-ups, have different demons and spirits interact with each other. That could be so cool. Now, I can't recommend this movie to be watched in the movie theater. It's not worth it. But since there are a few entertaining scenes and likable characters, I'd say watch this one at home. It's a perfect throwaway horror movie you can watch if you randomly switch on the TV and it's playing. So what did you think about The Nun? Did it scare you? And how did it compare with the other movies in the Conjuring universe? Leave your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe. Movie Slinger out.